Welcome to the Comedy Reset Spotlight. This is the place to be if you want to hear from some of the most innovative and exciting comedy creators from around the globe. On this podcast, you'll hear from a variety of guests who are pushing the boundaries of what comedy can be. If you're looking for fresh perspectives and new ideas, this is the podcast for you.
Episode 23. Long Island, New York comedian, Ellen Barron.
When did you first start doing stand-up comedy?
I first started doing stand-up comedy in 2005. I was living in the city and working just outside of Times Square. I have a degree in acting, so I had done the auditioning circuit for a very long time. And comedians always seemed braver than actors. They had to write their own material. They couldn't hide behind costumes or script or dialect. So I always wanted to try it. And then when I finally started, I took a class. I took Linda Smith's class. I believe it was called, not at the time, but before Caroline's closed, it was called Manhattan Comedy School at Caroline's. Linda was a wonderful teacher. She helped everyone build their first 5 minutes of stand-up. She was very supportive. It was very much a safe space to fail before you went up on that stage. And then your graduation was 5 minutes at Caroline's in Times Square. Talk about throwing your feet into the fire, throwing you into the deep end of the pool. I loved it. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at the same time.
What made you want to become a stand-up comedian?
Like I said, I always thought comedians were braver than actors. I mean, it's one thing to be a good actor and memorize your lines and know your dialects and be in the moment on stage. And it's completely another to write your own jokes, costume yourself, and see if what you can write can make a collective group of people laugh. I thought the challenge was worth investigating. And when I would talk to a lot of my actor friends before I had even tried it, I would say, I think I want to try stand-up. And so many of them said to me, no, not me. No, that's terrifying. No, that's terrifying. I could never do that. But I still wanted to try it.
Who were some of your influences?
Oh, so many. Before I ever even had an idea of doing stand-up comedy, when I was very young, I had a mad crush on George Burns. I thought the man was adorable. I thought, of course, the banter with George and Gracie was just, again, adorable. I remember working some waiter job the day George Burns passed away, and I was standing in line with the other waiters waiting to get food to feed like a group of people. And one of the people on the line said, "Did you hear George Burns died today?" Oh, I looked like an idiot. I burst into tears. People thought I was crazy. They said, he was like 106. I said, I know. But he was like, I had just such a crush on him. But comedy-wise, oh my God, it runs the gamut. Let's see. I was, a kid of the 80s. So Ellen DeGeneres, Rita Rudner, Elaine Boozler. I remember Howie Mandel had a few jokes I can still remember that cracked me up. Of course, George Carlin. People used to memorize his stuff. And even, before the tide turned, Mr. Cosby there. but I don't know that any of them influenced me. I guess some of them influenced me in the fact that I knew I never wanted to be too blue. I had no problem with like skirting the line or double entendres, but I did not want to be, too blue. Yeah. Who else? I don't know. Every HBO comedy special that ever aired in the 80s and 90s. Dana Carvey. Can't finish. So many, male and female. Yeah. Can't even begin to count. I should have made a list.
What was your first time on stage like?
Wow. Okay, so that was that first 5 minutes of Caroline's. Wow. I don't think I've ever sweat so much. And I wore, period costumes for some shows, layers and layers. I could not believe how many pores I had on my body, apparently. But I was memorized. We were all memorized. And the audience was always, very supportive for those graduation shows, and especially a graduation show at Times Square. I mean, you've got, everyone's friends and family. It's like, you're in Times Square doing comedy. I don't, the actual 5 minutes, a blur. I have it on tape. I can go back and look at it. But I got through it. You start to say, they like that one. I got a reaction on that one. I still am guilty of this. Probably went too fast. Probably stepped on my own laughs. But exhilarating, absolutely exhilarating. And like the size of the audience, Caroline's did not frighten me at all. Some people might be more intimidated by that, but as a theater person, that doesn't bother me. Like, actually, the bigger the house, the better, because the reaction has a tendency to be collective and infectious. So even if the laugh will start in one place, it will usually graduate to the rest of the room. But yeah, I mean, it was exhilarating. And yes, and without a doubt, I was then off to the races.
What's your favorite joke?
Oh, that's hard. My favorite joke I've ever written, or my favorite joke in life? Because it's definitely not from me. My favorite joke in life. I don't know. It varies, I would say. It varies. If I were talking about stuff I've written, I feel like for every set, I may have like a favorite joke or a favorite portion of a joke within a premise. That's my favorite then for that moment. And then, maybe a different premise will get tweaked and a different punchline will get tweaked a couple of weeks later. And then the crowd likes that one even better. So then that becomes my favorite joke. If you can see where it's coming and like the audience, they don't know it's coming, but you're like, just wait. And then it works. That one becomes my favorite joke. I also have had favorite jokes that the reaction is a collective awe, a collective ew. I don't care. To me, that counts. It's like art in a museum. You are eliciting a reaction. And I feel like in comedy, it's eliciting a group reaction. Like I used to have a joke that I don't do anymore, but I used to get one of these groans where it was about New York City sidewalks. And I would say, you families that like to hold hands in the middle of the sidewalk, you're all going to have to walk in oncoming traffic, holding onto a rope, like the blind children on Little House on the Prairie. And like, I knew it was coming and I knew it was building up and it's just kind of dated now. So I don't really do that one anymore, but I knew it was coming and like, it's that timing thing. Like when you have it down and ooh, you guys are in for a treat. Wait till I do the punchline and then the topper and then the next topper. That to me will automatically become my favorite joke, no matter in whatever set I'm doing.
What's the worst heckler experience you've ever had?
I've been very lucky. Let me knock on wood right now. I've been very lucky with that. I haven't really had a lot of experience with hecklers. Maybe it's not so lucky. Maybe I need the experience. I have had people want to talk back to me at a show. They're a little too tipsy but they're enjoying what I'm saying. So they want to agree, wholeheartedly with me. Yeah. Or give their example of the same thing. I don't mind that. That's fine. That's fine. But no, I've been pretty blessed. I've been pretty blessed not to have been heckled. Yeah. Let me knock on wood again.
What's the best gig you've ever had?
I would say the best gig I've ever had was, on a personal level, producing my own show last year for the first time, securing the space, working with wonderful other female comedians, and we put ourselves on the lineup. I also made myself MC for the first time. I'd never done that before. And we made enough on our first show to pay our headliner. I was very proud of that and proud of myself. And so recently, I would say that's the best gig I've ever had, was producing my first show. Overall, I would say any one of my best gigs would be one where everything goes well, where it goes seamlessly, from a technical perspective, from comics who either feed off of each other, one after the other, or who the audience doesn't turn on them. I've seen that happen a couple times. The audience wasn't in the mood for whatever the comic was dishing out, but if the audience stays on a good through line, up on a high, and the show doesn't go too long, those are some of the best gigs I've ever had too. Yet where everyone leaves feeling good, everyone feels like they got what they came for. They feel, laughter is the best medicine. And boy, do I feel like I got my medicine tonight. Like those wind up feeling like some of the best gigs I've ever had as well.
What's the worst gig you've ever had?
Oh, this one is easy. Worst gig I ever had was my first time in the big room at Gotham. Gotham has a little room and a big room. And you had to bring 10 people. And I was probably 2 years into bringer shows in Manhattan at this point, and I was running out of people. But I had 7 out of 10, and the host came up to me. I was about to be on stage, and the host said to me, "You have 7 out of 10 people here. I'm going to need you to cut your set in half, and you're next." Worst flop sweat. I was revisited with the flop sweat from Caroline's from that first show. Oh, here comes all the sweat again. Who had never had to cut my set on the fly. Was not good at it. Again, a blur, and I think I would watch that one with my hand over my mouth, but I tried to cut stuff, not sure where I did or what I said, but got the light and was like, "You're done, you're out." So that was definitely my worst gig ever.
How do you deal with stage fright?
I don't. All right, here's a really embarrassing, funny story. Not for me, but okay. So when I used to work at Caroline's, I usually was doing the first show, the 7:30 show. And if you've ever been in the little tiny green dressing room at Caroline's, it's very, very tiny, and there is an even tinier bathroom right off the dressing room. And it seemed that like every comic would just show up at 7:15 for the 7:30 show, and one by one would just go in there and just take a big giant dump. And it was just the dressing room itself, like somebody needed to add some potpourri, or some that potpourri spray had not been invented yet. But man, so that's how those comics dealt with their stage fright. Again, not that much of an issue for me because of the theater background, but I also was the geek who was doing vocal warm-ups, walking up and down the aisles of Caroline's before it opened. And I was probably one of the only people doing that. Like, not a lot of people going unique New York, in Caroline's beforehand. I guess the standard is just go take a dump and then go on stage. But I would warm up. I would do my standard theater warm-ups. If it was a set that had a lot of physicality or act outs, I would literally stretch beforehand. If I could get a chance to just stand on the stage ahead of time before the show starts, just to get the lay of the land, see if there's lights above me, where the light's going to be shining in my face. Preparation. I just feel like the more preparation you do, the less stage fright is going to come into the equation. Yeah, that's basically it.
What was the most unexpected response you've ever gotten to one of your jokes?
It was probably that one when it first happened, that Little House on the Prairie joke, saying make people hold the rope like the blind kids on Little House on the Prairie. Collectively, the whole audience looked at me and was basically like in shock, like more of an O than an aw, like, and the first time it happened, I thought, uh-oh, should I be upset? And then when I went back and looked at the tape, like, I didn't know. No, it didn't bother me. Like, and I know that I don't push the envelope as much as far as many other comics will push the envelope. I'm pretty benign. But the first time it happened, yeah, it does feel kind of shocking. I've never had anybody flat out, yell or say anything was too inappropriate or I crossed any kind of line. But now, as far as my writing, I almost can tell if I'm writing a groaner versus, a regular laugh, the one that's going to get the audience to just have a regular chuckle or a laugh. And I don't mind that. I like a good groaner now. But the first time it was a little shocking.
How do you prepare for a show?
Personally, if you're going back to like, how do I build the set? I would say a couple weeks before I would, looking at the venue and the clientele, start to put your set together. For instance, if you're doing a set at an assisted living facility, you're not going to go in with your spring break jokes, something like that. But depending on the audience, you go and you're going to pick out what bits you want to do. You have to know obviously how much time you have. So I also have all my bits for the most part. Like in parentheses, I'll have the amount of time each bit will take. Like this one's 55 seconds. This one's a minute and a half. So I'll put the set together about 2 weeks before. And then because I do sets in different orders, I have to remember to keep it in the order I'm making it for this show. And then, I would say the week of, I start running it a couple of times in the beginning of the week. And then I will run it probably several times day before and several times day of. But I want to, I'm not leaving anything to prepare when I get there. Like by the time I'm in the car and driving to the gig, that's it. No more preparing. I'm just at that point doing my geeky vocal warm-ups. I also will print out my full set, just usually keep that in my purse. And then I will write a little index card cut out of the bullet pointed, just target words for the set. I always keep a list of, the date, the name of the show, who's producing, who's on the show with me, who's headlining. Because, if you think you're going to remember that, you're not going to. So I always like to have that so I can go back and look. obviously, got to pick an outfit. I like to personally not wear the same. I consciously try to wear something different for every show that I do. Maybe it's psychological, but I feel like if you're wearing the same outfit at the same comedy club, doesn't that look like the same gig? And I feel like, wouldn't you want it to look like more and more gigs? So I consciously try to pick a different outfit every time I do a show. I think that's about it. I do, vocal warm-ups in the car, usually driving to the gig. Oh, I always bring a tripod. If possible, I always try and tape myself. Just try and tape yourself on a taller tripod that's like maybe 3 feet or higher. But you want to keep some heads in view so it doesn't look like you're taping an empty room with you doing comedy. And then, when you're there, it's also a business. You want to be networking, you want to be shaking hands and meeting people, and the selfie game is very strong in comedy. So make sure you get your selfies with people, and it's a business on top of being an art.
What's the best advice you've ever been given about stand-up comedy?
That you have to make time to write. If you think, I will, I'll do it later, I'll write it down, you won't. I won't. I didn't. Until you make a conscious effort to set a time aside to exercise that muscle of writing, ideally it should be every day. I'm guilty. I don't write every day. But in the beginning, I did. And I would set an alarm, and for some reason, ideas would come to me first thing in the morning, as soon as I had that first cup of coffee. Nowadays, actually, jokes usually come to me while I'm in the car. And then nowadays, you also have a record button on your phone, so it's relatively easy to record your thoughts. But yeah, you have to constantly be writing, and you should be able, you should be able to write a joke about anything. Absolutely anything. You should be able to open the newspaper, pick a topic, and write a joke about it. And I feel like that's the pinnacle of being a comedy writer. If you can, do that, point to anything and write a joke about it. Wow. Excellent. Amazing. But it is a discipline. That's probably the best advice. And it is a discipline. And you have to make time for it, and you have to hone your craft. And probably the one other best piece of advice is don't be married to anything that just because it came out of your mouth once or came out of your brain once. I spend more time editing than I do writing. Everything comes out stream of consciousness in the beginning. And there are jokes that I did years and years ago that I'm still honing, and I'm still changing, and I'm still updating, either for the current culture or the current times, or just because I found a funnier punchline. So yeah, never stop writing, whether it's the new stuff, revising the old stuff, and don't be married to the first thing you wrote.
What's the worst advice you've ever been given about stand-up comedy?
Worst advice I've ever been given about stand-up comedy was probably when my ex thought that he could write better jokes than I could, even though he'd never, ever, ever, ever written a joke or performed on stage. That was probably the worst. No, not. I mean, advice. Here's how I feel about advice. Everyone can give you advice, and you take what you can use, and you throw away the rest. It's not. I mean, maybe the worst advice. I've had some not so good comedy teachers. I have taken an exorbitant amount of comedy classes. I need to cut myself off and self-graduate from comedy classes. But I have had. I have had a teacher in the past who didn't give the best advice from a female comedian's point of view. And maybe that's because they weren't a female. So they just couldn't see it from my point of view. But nothing horrendously bad. And like, I feel like I can weed out the bad advice and just not take it.
What would you say is the biggest misconception about stand-up comedy?
I would say maybe two, that people think that comedians make stuff up on the spot on stage, and that comedians are always funny off stage. Yes, and unless if you're like, I've had a supportive, audience members that have seen my set more than once, and so they know some bits, and they know that they're somewhat rehearsed. Obviously, every performance is different, but they know where the punches are going to land because they've seen my set more than once. But some people honestly think that comedians just make that all up all the time, just made up from scratch every time. And obviously, if you're someone who just solely does crowd work, you are making it up all the time. That's some serious improv right there. But if it's a set up punch kind of situation, yeah, no, that's written out ahead of time. That's honed. That's rehearsed, and it's memorized. And when people are like, "Oh, you're a comedian. Tell me a joke. Tell me a joke." And that's the other big misconception. Yeah. We're not happy all the time. I have laundry to do. I have dishes to do. I dog who won't leave me alone. So no, we're not happy all the time. So to me, those are the biggest two.
What do you believe is the key to success in stand-up comedy?
Having enough likes, apparently. Nowadays, social media is playing a big aspect in the success of stand-ups. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, like, if I knew, I'd be holding tutorials. I have no idea. I have no idea. And it depends on what your level of success is. Do you want to, rise to the level of, featured comic? Do you want to be a headliner? Is your ultimate dream goal to parlay, headlining gigs into TV? Then you're going to move to, oh God, who knows? Like, it depends on your level of success. What you define, as your level of success. To me, right now, I'm defining success in stand-up comedy that I'm still doing it, and to be quite honest, Joke Zoom has made me a better writer and more consistent writer of new material than anything else has in my comedy career, and I'm very grateful to Rob for that. So to me, success is to keep going, to just keep going, keep writing, keep trying out new things. Try to make that you joke based on absolutely anything in the news. There's a tire sale at Mavis Discount Tires, right? I joke about it. To just keep going, and like, learning is incremental. You're not going to feel it overnight, and I didn't feel it overnight, but I don't know. I think I'm rounding 2 years with Joke Zoom, and I can, looking back, absolutely see my progress and what I feel like has led to my own success. And hell, I produced my own show. I never thought I would do that, and and I'm planning on trying to do several more this year in 2023. So it depends on how you define it, but I think it all starts with the phrase "keep going."
What do you think is the biggest obstacle that stand-up comedians face?
Biggest obstacle stand-up comedians face. I guess on an individual basis, some would say they aren't getting the gigs that they want, or they maybe they're not getting the shows they want, the size of the venue they want. I feel like part of the biggest obstacle that comedians as an industry face is that there isn't the structure of what would you call it? The structure of professional assignment of roles as there is in any other aspect of the entertainment industry. I know it would obviously be a huge thing, but like, just there's no union type rules in place for comedians. There's no structured way to prove yourself as a professional comedian, and be rewarded with, here's your comedy union card. You will get hired at the following structured venue. I mean, this is probably because I am a member of Actors Equity, and once you get to the level of union, whether it's SAG or AFTRA or Equity, it comes along with a certain amount of rules and structure and protocol as to how you can be treated as a professional, because you are bringing the professional services of an actor, of a singer, to a professional production, and they have to treat you as such. And that may involve, giving you, an air-conditioned, non-poopy smelling dressing room, or may require that, there's always, hot and cold water on set or whatever. It's not that much. And of course it goes up in tiers according to the level of contract you get within a union itself. Like Equity has different tiers of contracts. But I feel like as an industry, that's the biggest obstacle that comedians face. It is a very difficult industry. You are on your own for all the travel, all the bookings. It's you, and all you. And that is so, I give them, so much credit. But that's, I think, the biggest obstacle that comedians face, is that they do not, there's no structure in place for them to be rewarded for their professionalism. Let's say you were a professional comedian, and the first year out as a professional comedian, you book 5 shows at a comedy club that holds, 150 people or more. Maybe that gets you your, comedy union apprenticeship. The next year you book 10 shows. Now you're, a journeyman. But there should, I feel like I wish there was some structure in place to prove yourself and prove your level of experience and get rewarded for it as such.
What do you think sets stand-up comedy apart from other forms of comedy?
I feel like stand-up comedy is a tennis match between the comedian and the audience. Sketch comedy, love it, very funny. The audience is engaged with 2, 3, 4, 6 people on the stage, on the set, following along with the whole story, but they're receiving energy from more than one person. And I feel like what sets stand-up apart is a group singularly focused on one person. I feel like Ellen DeGeneres' HBO show, I don't know when it was, late 90s, maybe early 2000s. She is an unbelievable example of being able to volley back and forth with the audience. She's in utter control of it, but it's a tennis match. It's back and forth. I'm going to lob this over. You're going to hit it back with a big laugh. I'm going to lob it right back. You're going to hit it right back with a big laugh. And she's in control of it the entire time. And I feel like that's the difference. I feel like it's a tennis match between one person playing with a group.
What are the benefits of stand-up comedy?
Oh, benefits. Being able to make conversation with anyone on any line in Marshalls or Stop and Shop. No. Confidence, for sure. It is not easy to do stand-up comedy. I've had numerous, local electric union number 3 guys say, you've got balls to do that. So apparently it takes balls. But no, it definitely gives you confidence. It can hone, obviously, your business skills, your networking skills. It can bring joy not only to yourself, but obviously to a group of people. Like, that's probably the biggest benefit is, I just love that. And like, I love when people will come up after the show and be like, oh, what you said about that one line, or they'll repeat the line back to me. That's my favorite. To me, that's the benefit. That's the benefit. People repeating my set back to me. That is the biggest benefit. No, it makes you feel good. It flat out makes you feel good. And it gives you confidence that can work in so many other aspects of your life.
What's your process for writing jokes?
I try to keep all my jokes on one cloud-based note-taking software app that can sort by premise. So the top will be like, I don't know, premises, women's rights. And then from the list, you can add a card for each joke. I can tell you the software later. I'm not getting paid to promote them. And it's free. It's free. I don't pay for anything. I try to keep it there because it's on my phone, it's on my laptop, it's on my tablet. And anytime I write something there, it updates in all three places. So I don't have a Post-it note here, a 3x5 card here. So that's probably the biggest thing. I try and keep it all in a cloud-based thing that I can sort by lists. The lists are each premise. Like I said, I get a lot of ideas when I'm driving a lot. So those, if you can, same software has, when you go to write, you can also just hit your microphone. So you don't necessarily have to type in the same software that syncs everywhere. You can just hit microphone and record, and it will sync everywhere. My process of writing jokes. The very first thing I ever did, and I probably should have said this earlier, I read the comedy Bible before I ever got on stage. I read the comedy Bible, cover to cover. I like that jokes are, there are formulas for jokes. I think that's, just so fun. Just the brainstorming of the format a joke can take, from a misdirect, to the rule of threes. It's like there are so many different combinations, but like once the basic, 7 to, there's arguably, 7 to 10 formats. There's so many different combinations, and I'm like a joke writing geek in that sense. I love the let's hit him with this on this one. What if we came at it from this angle on that one? And I just love that. I think that's how my brain is starting to work. It's not automatic, but I'm starting to think in formulate joke formulas. So it's a lot of brainstorming and stream of consciousness in the beginning, like I said, and then I go back and I edit a lot. And if I find out, like if I look up and I'm doing like the rule of threes 3 times in a row, I'm like, oh, that's too many. I'll mix it up, with a misdirector or some other formula to so it's not so repetitive. But yeah, the basic is stream of consciousness, and to be whittled down until, and then you just, when editing, you just take out literally any words that are unnecessary. Every every o, every did you know, I just take it all out. And if you read it later and it really, really seems too short, maybe you add one word back in, but like I take out as many words as possible. I don't know. That's pretty much it in a nutshell, I guess. Yeah. And then if I know the joke goes over well in my writing, I'll put a check marks next to it. Once it's a true and tried and tested joke and I know it works, I put a check mark next to it. Then I feel like I know that works in that iteration of that joke. It's done. It's complete. It doesn't need to be tweaked anymore. It can always be tweaked, but I know as it is, it will work. So that's about it.
What's the most important thing for a stand-up comedian to remember?
To zip up their fly. No. The most important thing I remember is their set, as absolutely their set. You don't want to be too over memorized or too over rehearsed where you don't vibe with what the audience is giving you in the moment, but you definitely want to be memorized enough that if someone does interrupt you or God forbid heckles you, you can get the audience back in line with what you're saying and pick up, hopefully not far from where you're left off. Remember your set.
What do you think are the best techniques for dealing with hecklers?
I don't have any because, like I said, I've been blessed not to be heckled, outright heckled in a show. I would say, the best experience I could give you would be as an actor. I did an improvised show where the audience could talk back to you, and you started to be able to tell who was going to talk back to you. You have one or two sentences in your pocket that you can pull out. This was in an improv show, so it wasn't a scripted show. But I would assume, if you're getting heckled, I would assume have some tricks in your pocket or some couple of sentences that are, I don't know, generic enough, but take control of the room enough to get the audience back to be focused on you. But I don't really have that much experience on that.
What do you think are the biggest mistakes that stand-up comedians make?
I would say cursing for cursing's sake. I'm not against cursing, but I think it should be used selectively and for emphasis. Maybe in the beginning, there's a lot of cursing for cursing's sake. Having too many words, unnecessary words in your punchlines. Like, one of my mistakes is stepping on my laughs, not taking enough time to give the audience a chance to react. So then the audience might feel stifled, and you definitely don't want to make the audience feel stifled. So if you start to hear that reaction, give yourself a minute to pause and get that reaction. Forgetting your set. That's probably the biggest one.
What is the best way to learn stand-up comedy?
I don't know that I'm average as far as the best way to learn stand-up comedy. I didn't do it the average way. When I did my 5 minutes at Caroline's, I had never even done an open mic. But most people, they will write material, test it out at an open mic, figure out what works, and then get booked on a quote-unquote real show. The way I did it is I read the comedy Bible, and then I took several classes, and each class helped me build a 5-minute set. And now I'm at the point where I feel like I, don't need to be walked through making a 5-minute set. But I also didn't go about it in the standard way that so many comics did, and got their feet wet doing open mics. I just went from let's take a class to, okay, you're on Caroline's. But I'd say, take a class. If it were me, take a class and definitely read the comedy Bible. Those were my two.
What do you think is the best way to improve as a stand-up comedian?
Keep writing, keep performing, keep testing it out, have more than one punchline ready to try. Just keep going, keep trying. After a while, you're going to feel the itch when you haven't been on stage in a while, and you're like, oh, I have to get back on stage. Oh, I have these 3 new bits I really want to try out. That's the only way you're going to improve, by continuing to write, continuing to exercise that writing muscle and that performing muscle. And a lot of comedians are writers initially, and not performers initially. And I was the opposite. I had to really work on that writing muscle, because the performing part wasn't that, scary to me. But write, edit, perform.
What has stand-up comedy taught you about yourself?
It has taught me that I do have some chops when it comes to joke writing. It's taught me that I am starting to find my voice. when it comes to joke telling. Yeah, those two, probably two of the biggest things. And it's taught me about my level of confidence that stand-up can give you. Yeah, those are probably the biggest ones.
What motivates you to keep performing stand-up comedy?
It's a sickness. It is a sickness at this point. No, I if I write a new joke, I want people to hear it. I want to see how well it goes over. I want to see if the way that I've set it up and the punch that I think is really going to land, is it really going to land? When I stop writing new stuff to try out on people, maybe I will be less motivated to keep performing stand-up comedy. But as long as I keep writing things that people are telling me they can relate to, like, oh, my husband does that, oh, my ex does that, I'm gonna keep moving on.
What advice would you give to someone who's thinking about doing stand-up comedy?
Take a class. Read the Comedy Bible. Don't be married to the first thing you write. In the beginning, set up a time to keep writing, and after a while, you'll figure out naturally when those jokes come to you. But yeah, if you're not sure where to start, be like me, be a geek like me, and take a class.
Is there anything you'd like to add that we did not cover?
No, I think you covered. I think you covered it. Thank you very much for having me.
I've been your host, Rob Chaffee. Don't forget to laugh today. It's good for you. Comedy Reset Spotlight is a podcast that brings you today's freshest and funniest comedy creators. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to hear more.